Notice that Farnham is the only one who did get the note about wearing a tie today.
Come on, Farnham.
I haven't been here since July. In July, it was summertime. There were no ties.
Get with it.
We've evolved a good deal since then. But meanwhile, we're still talking about the same thing, and that's Dak Prescott's contract. He threw a career-high 4,902 yards last year. That was second in the NFL behind Jameis Winston. He came up 1 yard shy of matching Tony Romo for the most in a single season in Cowboys franchise history. And that wasn't all. He threw for a career-high 30 touchdowns. That was fourth in the league. He joined Romo as the only quarterbacks with 30 passing touchdowns in a season in Cowboys history. And he had a total QBR of 70.1. That was fourth in the sport. It's the second time he has posted a quarterback rating of at least 70 in his career. He had a QBR of over 77 his rookie year. In case you're not familiar with QBR, those are really good numbers. So it begs the question, why doesn't he have a contract? Here's part of the answer from Cowboys president Stephen Jones talking about the franchise tag. Quote, "Our goal is to avoid it. We want to get a deal done. We're going to roll up our sleeves, and when these things get momentum, they get done. But both sides have got to be in a place where we think we're within shouting distance of getting something done." And it feels like since the beginning of this, I've been shouting at Dan Graziano, and your answers have remained the same. But now the clock is, we have a friend, Andrew Brandt, who frequently says deadlines spur actions. Well, this deadline is finally coming on this franchise tag.
Yeah, but not soon, right? I hope I'm here the day he signs. Like,
Me too.
The payoff
And I
is
hope
really
it's
important
today.
to me at this point. Look, they have to do the franchise tag by March 10th, right? They have a window, 2-week window there. So if nothing's done by March 10th, they'll franchise him. And if nothing's done by July 15th, then he has to play out the year on the franchise tag. Something has to happen to make it move, and it's not going to happen on February 10th, unfortunately. If they get to the start of the offseason program and he's not there, that could be an interesting flex point because the Cowboys aren't allowed to require him to be there for voluntary workouts. They can't come out and say, yes, we want him here for the start of our program in April. That would be against the rules because those workouts are voluntary. But if he doesn't show up for that, that's an interesting point because that might let them know, hey, he's serious. He's trying to make a statement here that he might dig in on this, and that could prompt them to move in contract.
And so we talked today, and you brought up there the time when they can franchise tag him mid-March and then to mid-July where then they wouldn't be able to negotiate. The problem is that's where the entire offseason, Greeny, resides. You're bringing in a new coach. He's bringing in a new system that Dak has never played in. West Coast, it's going to be different terminology. And outside of him learning it, you're going to craft the offense to what your quarterback does well. And he was with Aaron Rodgers for 10 years. It's not like he knows Dak Prescott, the ins and outs and what he's going to do. So you can't build this thing for 6 months and all of a sudden August 1st say, hey, Dak's back. Let's just figure out what he does and then move in and go in on the season.
Okay, you had the franchise tag put on you before. Obviously, it's different for a quarterback, your experience, and then why it's different for a quarterback.
Exactly. It's completely different for a quarterback. For myself, I got franchise. Your running back gets franchise. Your linebackers get franchise. The offseason program will continue without you. Yeah, yes, you're a part of the team, but for a quarterback, you need him there day one. And it's extremely important that they make that happen because the leadership piece of it, a new system, new coach. I'm sure when McCarthy signed that contract, he knew or thought his quarterback would be there day one to develop and bring these guys along. You cannot go a whole offseason without having a quarterback.
Well, you were telling us this morning that when you got the franchise tag, you weren't unhappy about it. And what did you expect to happen after you signed it?
Well, I was unhappy initially, but then I expected to sign a long-term deal. I expected to be with that organization the following year.
And what actually happened?
I left and went and won a Super Bowl in Seattle.
Okay, that's the point, is that these things tend to take a turn. And so the question is, will they approach a point where a turn needs to be taken? We all act as though this thing is going to happen, but far stranger things have happened than one way or another Dak Prescott not being in Dallas next year.
Sure, I still think it's very unlikely. I think he's the Cowboys quarterback for this year and for the future. That is still their plan and his. But yeah, you get to who flexes their leverage first. Their leverage is the franchise tag. We will put the franchise tag on you. That's going to be $27 million. If you're looking for 35, 36, 37, this is a lot less. Let's meet in the middle. His leverage point is, maybe I won't show up for the start of that offseason program. I don't have to, especially if I'm franchised. I don't even have to go to training camp.
Yeah.
So how much is he willing to do that and call their bluff?
You know what? We only have a minute here. What I've never had Cliff answer is, how good do you think he is? When you look at the quarterbacks in the NFL, we have talked about him ad infinitum on this program, but I've never heard your opinion. Is he an elite quarterback, or is he going to become an elite quarterback in the NFL and deserves to be paid like those guys?
I think he is an elite quarterback. One thing, and Bobby, you know this, you only get so many opportunities at a bite of the apple, meaning a new contract, right? So you have to take advantage of this. He's played his best season last year. The record didn't necessarily show that, but for him in particular, he's growing every year. And that's what you want to see from a young quarterback. You want to see him grow. You want to see the growth in him and become that leader of that football team, and that's what he's become.
So I don't think he's one of the top 5 guys in the NFL, but if he's from 5 to 10, you can win a Super Bowl. He played like that this year. He's a really tremendous leader, which is why you need him there during the offseason to provide that leadership. And if he's not there during the offseason, I like Dallas as probably one of the 2 or 3 favorites out of the NFC to potentially contend for the Super Bowl. If he doesn't show up until training camp, I would say you have to completely change those odds.
Yeah, that's the end of the season.
And one of the things, too, is there's a new offense that they'll be implementing. We'll talk about that more later on this show. But one of the biggest questions heading into this offseason is where Tom Brady will end up signing. Michael Irvin was on WEEI in Boston recently, discussed a very interesting possibility of the Cowboys trading Dak Prescott and signing Brady. Here's what Irvin said.
At that Super Bowl in Miami, some very significant people and I had some conversations leaning in that same direction, and it was shocking. I mean, I had a vodka cranberry in my hand, and when they said it to me, I put the drink down and said, let's talk a little bit more.
Wait, what? Okay, Irvin went on Twitter Sunday to clarify those comments. He said, I never said Jerry or anyone in the organization said this to me. It was not anyone with the Dallas Cowboys. First of all, Dan Graziano, did you see this happening at all?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I don't see it happening. No,
But can we all agree that Michael
was-
Irvin is a national treasure?
He is. He is.
That's
and
my
I would
favorite
love to
soundbite
have
of the year
a
so
vodka
far.
cranberry with Michael Irvin and talk this over a little bit more. But I think it's look. He clarifies and said it didn't come from the Dallas Cowboys. That's a pretty important clarification, right? If he's talking to people in the Cowboys organization and they're saying this, that's one thing. Everything's going to be all over the map with Tom Brady until he reaches a decision on where he's going to play. It's not bad for the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry and Stephen Jones if this is out there, right? I mean, they talk about leverage, right? If Dak Prescott has it in his head, oh, they might replace me with Tom Brady. Maybe that. It's all about pushing the guy toward you in the negotiation. But in terms of Brady, I think this would be shocking. I believe the Dallas Cowboys' plan is for Dak Prescott to be their quarterback, and I don't think that this is something that's being talked about at any serious level in their building.
Absolutely. I think that's the long-term play. But Jerry didn't get to where he is in life by not exploring every opportunity, every possible option. So it wouldn't surprise me if he would kick the tires on this. It's only going to help their leverage. And then let's just say, for instance, that he does go there. Greeny, you ready to move down to Dallas, take the whole studio down there to cover ad nauseum as a Dallas Cowboy, emerging?
Wow.
Tom Brady as a Dallas Cowboy equals ratings bonanza. But here's the one thought that I have on this, because we look at Brady as though, well, this is a wide open thing. He hasn't made up his mind yet. And what I'm reminded of is, after LeBron and D. Wade and Chris Bosh all came together in Miami, sometime thereafter it came out, they had decided that 2 years before. LeBron going to the Lakers was decided at least a year in advance. Kevin Durant going to the Nets was decided way in advance. We had people inside, we all know this, had people inside telling us, oh, he's going to Brooklyn, lock, stock, and barrel, months before it happened. So why should I believe that Tom Brady, who is as meticulous with this sort of thing as any human man who eats avocado ice cream, is going to walk into this process wide open? I don't buy that for 1 second. I believe he knows what he's doing.
I don't think he's 100% from what I understand. I think he knows the landscape. I think he knows who's going to be interested. And he may have an idea in his head, this is where I'm probably going to end up. But in the NFL, you have to know what the team's going to look like, too. There are other decisions these teams are making. The Patriots, the Chargers, the Raiders, whoever it is that's going to be in the Tom Brady market are making other decisions on how their team is going to be constructed. And Tom Brady's going to want to know how those decisions shake out before he decides where he's going to go. So I get your point, and I think you're more right than not. First of all, it's illegal for him to have contact with these teams until March 16th.
Of course it is.
Right, but we all know that sometimes, these deals come together shockingly quickly when free agency opens. But I think we're still at a fairly early point in the process, even though we're talking about, 5-6 weeks from now where he probably will be signed with someone.
Well, I think first and foremost with Tom, I don't see him leaving, right? Because we all know, Bobby, how hard it is to play a long time in this NFL, but to play on one organization for a long time, right? I played 10 years, played for 2 organizations. That's huge, right? But Tom Brady's been with one organization for 20 years. I feel like that throws off that legendary story, right? The story of, man, playing for one organization, bringing championships. And then if you look at what Tom has done in Boston, TB12, his workout facility is next door to their practice facility. Like, nobody's leaving all that behind to go play somewhere else, and especially not for the Cowboys. And if it is the Cowboys, you're talking about a 1 to 2 year rental for Tom Brady, and then you have a Dak Prescott who could probably be there for the next 10 years. I just don't think that's a good business move per se.
And as you look at this, to dovetail kind of what you said, Greeny, there's probably a couple different places, but different than the NBA. It's not like Tom just has to call 1 or 2 guys to get them to go.
Yeah.
It's the coaching staff. He had to figure out what was going on in New England, who is going to be where, and some of these are going to be scheme and system fits where he's going to probably need to sit down. And if he wants to go play for John Gruden, can we blend your version of the West Coast with kind of what I've always done? Because that's a very unique process.
But Dan Graziano, didn't he fight like crazy to get this into his contract, the ability to be an unrestricted free agent without them being able to franchise him months and months ago? So the notion that he just woke up the day after they got eliminated by Tennessee and said, well, now I'm a blank slate, I don't buy that at all.
No, but I mean, Adam Schefter was sitting in probably this very chair in maybe October when this was all going down, saying this brings in the possibility that he would go somewhere else. My understanding of this situation, Tom Brady is eager to be a free agent and pick his next destination. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I'm not 100% sure that it's 100% set. He has some other things he needs to figure out before he decides.
You always want options, right? I think that's why he put that clause in there, is you want options, one, to be able to re-up. The market is completely different from what it was a year ago. Tom Brady thinks, especially if he would win the Super Bowl, you're talking about $40 million a year, you know? So you want those options as far as from a contract standpoint to be able to get out of it if you're playing at a high level, to be able to get more money.
We'll see what happens. In the meantime, coming off a standout rookie year, Baker Mayfield had anything but a standout season last year as a sophomore, 2019, posting the worst touchdown to interception ratio in the sport, and his team went 6-10. Stephen A. Smith, for one thing, cannot believe people are making excuses for him. Listen to Steve.
What the hell is all of this stuff, the massaging of Baker Mayfield? What have you done? You've thrown 22 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. The bottom line is this. He can play. I'm not knocking Baker Mayfield. I know he's not a scrub. But my God, to sit up there and to soak up all that adulation and to produce so little, and for the folks to have this insatiable appetite to continue to support him, what are you going to do next? Put a pacifier in his mouth? It's ridiculous.
Someone follow that.
I will tell you this. Every general manager is going to support their quarterback
1,000%.
up until the point that they don't. And if you look at Tennessee coming in, Marcus Mariota was their guy. You look at the Bucs, Jameis Winston was their guy. Jameis Winston's probably not their guy going forward, and Mariota got benched in week 6. And so he had to come in. Barry had to say this about him. He was going to support him. And if you look at this, that's a way that they can justify, hey, he's had 2 coaches in 2 years. His offensive line wasn't where he needed to be. He was getting sacked a lot. There were a ton of issues that were outside of his control. And so with that now, I'm the guy that's going to come in and stabilize this. We'll build the roster around him, give him a stable coaching staff, and then also, you can push some of that success back into the front office.
That's all the GM can say is make that quarterback comfortable. He has to come out and just stay and rave about him to make him comfortable, to go into that locker room during the offseason and lead the charge. I've never seen a GM just bash, their quarterback going into the space. So, yes, you have to do that. But what I do think they do need to bring is another veteran quarterback to apply a little pressure to Baker Mayfield to make sure that he does take those strides and get better as a player, but more so than anything is as a leader.
Does that seem realistic to you, Dan?
I think it's realistic given what the veteran quarterback market looks like this year. There's going to be some pretty accomplished guys that are probably going to have to settle for backup jobs and might be okay with a role like that. This whole thing reminded me of a conversation I had with John Gruden a couple of years ago at training camp when it was his first year back in Oakland. And he said, everything that I say and everything that comes out of this organization has to be upbeat and positive about Derek Carr because we need to make sure he's in the best possible position to succeed. So this is not, what Andrew Berry is doing is not unusual and it's not wrong. But look, Baker Mayfield has 2 more years left on his rookie contract. They have the 5th year option after that. It's too soon to know about this 24-year-old. And by the way, you say 2 coaches. He's about to have his 4th different NFL head coach, and he's going into his 3rd season. That's not easy.
The only time I can remember front office not backing their quarterback was the Washington Redskins with Kirk Cousins, and everybody famously knows how that went, where they're talking trash back and forth in the media. And so when you see this, everybody's going to support their guy, because if they don't, Who else is going to?
I actually think it could be really good for Baker to have a backup that could push him a little bit. But I think, too, I mean, a lot of it's going to be on him to really be that guy that we saw in Miami who was contrite and apologetic for the way that he had acted last year. I think that's a big part of it no matter what.
I think he just needs to play better. His rookie year, he showed he had a little magic. And then it is remarkable what happens when hope turns into expectation. And going from 7 wins his rookie year, I think they won 7 games his rookie year. That was a remarkable accomplishment for a team that had been 0-16 the year before. And then last year, winning 6 games with the additions that they made, all of a sudden was a disaster. They need to get a better offensive line. They need a better head coach. We'll see if the new guy they bring in is a better head coach. There are a lot of things that have gone on around Baker Mayfield. He fits perfectly into the box that I have laid out many times. More good young quarterbacks are ruined in the NFL than developed. Last year, there were a lot of things going bad in Cleveland. He was only one of them.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's important for people to remember that Andrew Berry, the new GM, was a part of that Cleveland front office when they drafted Baker Mayfield. So it's not as if he has no connection to the pick.
Okay, more on football coming, but some sneaky big news from the NBA yesterday. Despite watching a Lakers game courtside with Jeannie Buss last week, veteran guard Darren Collison has reportedly decided to remain retired, will not return to the NBA this season. Here's what Ramona Shelburne and Brian Windhorst had to say last week after the Lakers decided to stand pat at the trade deadline.
They were very focused on not disrupting their culture, okay, not disrupting this brotherhood that they've built, not just over the course of the season, but especially so in this last week.
It's one of the best locker rooms in the NBA.
I don't know what you do.
Just in terms of the way the guys relate to each other, you can tell it the minute you walk in there.
What Ramona is describing is important, and I don't know what I would have done if I was Rob Pelinka, because I still feel like the Lakers are a player short.
Sean Farnham here. Sean, let's just ask it
no
this way.
No confetti?
Yeah, listen, we haven't brought confetti to this show yet.
We're just going to not acknowledge the confetti.
I was going to try to move on, but you went there. So anyway, are the Lakers good enough as constructed to win the Western Conference, and maybe more?
Well, first I would say about this Darren Collison situation with his decision to not play in the NBA this year. If the title hopes for the Lakers hinged on Darren Collison playing for them, I think that we'd have much larger concerns. The Lakers' title hopes rest on 2 people's shoulders: Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Period. If they're healthy, if they're at their best, they have a legitimate chance to win the championship. This is not breaking news. We've been talking about it since this was all announced that this whole thing was coming together. So they're the most talented duo in the NBA. They have the ability to take over and win a championship, yes. The concern becomes the management aspect of the rest of the season and how much you're requiring out of them on a night-in, night-out basis.
Well, are they requiring too much of them? Because I understand that Darren Collison or any other one individual piece, Marcus Morris, might not be the difference in May. But is it the difference in getting them there so that when they get to the postseason, they're not exhausted because Kawhi Leonard is watching as many games as he plays these days?
Well, I think it could be. And I think that, you asked me earlier this morning, if you had to bet your house, would you bet your house that the Lakers are going to win the NBA title? And I said, no, I would not. If I had to bet my house on a team, it would be the Clippers. And I think the biggest...
Would that have changed if the Lakers had gotten Marcus Morris instead of the Clippers?
No.
Would it have changed if they had gotten Darren Collison?
No.
Is there anything they could or could have done that would change that?
No, not when what was available during this free agent. Now we're talking about Deion Waiters. It's not going to change it if they get Deion Waiters. I think when you look at the Clippers, the reason why I'm so in on the Clippers is that you have the best defensive guards in the NBA. When you took Patrick Beverley, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. You're talking about Kawhi Leonard, who had the most unbelievable playoff run that we've seen since maybe Michael Jordan. And then you look at their bench. Their bench actually leads the NBA in points, rebounds, and minutes. It's productive. It's really good. It's allowing them to stay healthy. It's allowing them to kind of manage their way through the regular season so that when it gets to playoff time, that's when you can take over. And I think that's the focus, obviously, for both these two teams. And look, if the Lakers get the best overall record in the Western Conference and the Clippers are the 2 seed, guess where they're playing in the Western Conference Finals?
Yeah, in their own building.
In their own building.
Yeah.
They're not traveling.
And those would be 7 Laker home games no matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't make any difference.
So it doesn't make a difference. What it makes a difference is, are you going to be healthy, in particular those 2 guys, and can Kawhi Leonard and the depth of the Clippers outlast them come June?
I'll say this. I like the Lakers. I would definitely bet your house on them. All right, coming up, Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes are the last 2 MVPs in the NFL. Who will win it next year? One of those guys or somebody new? We have 20